Hello. Are you ready for today's episode of your favorite show? That's right. We're back for another episode of How You're Getting Fucked. I'm your host, Louis Rossman, and today we're going to continue to hammer home why it is breaking DRM, in my opinion, is completely justified, moral, and should never be a violation of federal law. Today we're going to be talking about a piece of software called FaceFX. FaceFX is a piece of software that costs about $1,000, give or take. It's like $988 and some cents. This was software that allows you to animate somebody's face based on audio. So if you take a picture of my face and you want to put it into a video game and you have me saying certain things, it'll have my face animate based on the audio that it hears, which is pretty useful. A lot of solo game developers are using this because it cost about $1,000 and it was pretty useful. And a user recently got a communication saying that his perpetually licensed FaceFX Studio Professional that had been bought for $988.68 was going to stop working on November 30th, 2026. And that continued use of it would require FaceFX Unlimited at $35,000 per year, or FaceFX Runtime at $25,000 a platform. They said that they understand that as a solo developer, these costs may not fit within your budget. Your FaceFX professional license, I mean, yeah, I paid $1,000 for it, and they're not saying, okay, you have to pay $1,000 again. They're not saying that you have to pay $2,000 again. They're not saying you have to pay $1,000 a year. They're saying, you know that thing you paid $1,000 for once? How would you like to pay $25,000 to $35,000 a year? And if you don't, we're going to take it away from you. But wait, it gets better. This is completely legal, apparently, in the United States of America because of this one part of their terms of service. Term. This OC3 agreement is effective until terminated. You may terminate this agreement at any time. OC3 may terminate this OC3 agreement upon notice to you. Very similar to what I was discussing in the video on Amazon and their contract where they had something that didn't have ads. You could pay to have video without ads. They put ads into it and they said if you want to not have ads, you can just pay more money even though you already paid for it. And that's okay because the contract says that they can change what they give you at any time. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. This is not just about me hating on this particular company or even wanting this particular scenario to change. Forget about this company, forget about FaceFX. If you have a contract that says you've paid $1,000 to have access to this and you put somewhere in the contract that we can take it away from you and say, LOLJK, $1,000 is enough. We actually want $35,000 a year. When you do something that ridiculous, this is not just saying that your $300 license is suspended. We can't support this software forever. Pay $300 again. You are taking it to a level of absurdity that makes it impossible for people to respect contract law. And the reason that we have contract law in the United States and in most developed countries is because when you don't have contract law, you have people that pick up a screwdriver or a hammer and smash people on the head with it to get what they want. For most of human history, 99% of human history, it was whoever was the strongest won. You have to think about the society that we live in at this point, where when you just look at eBay, for all the problems with eBay, people are willing to give away $1,000 or $2,000 of their money to somebody they've never met, that they don't know, that they can't see, and they just have faith that after $1,000 has been taken from them, that somebody they don't know is going to package something, and then somebody else that they don't know is going to deliver it to them. That's crazy. For most of human history, this would have not been possible. It's only possible because we now are starting to live in a high-trust society. And unfortunately, that high-trust society that took hundreds of thousands of millions of years to build is being destroyed inside of 5 to 10 years in a very speed-run process. I'm not even saying this for your company. Like, fuck your company for a moment, forget about it. And I say this as a business owner. And I'm known as a consumer advocate on this channel at this point, but I'm first and foremost a business owner. And that's one of the things, and I come at this from the standpoint of a business owner, from the standpoint of like the things that I would and would not do to my customers and what I would expect my customers to do to me if I did this to them. There are a number of things that I don't do because I don't have an office with security. I have a basic ass store that anybody can walk into, and half of the time when I'm there, you can see where I am. And if I do something that is fucked up enough to my customers, somebody is going to walk in with a machete and let me know what's up. I'm not saying this is an avocation of violence at all. I'm saying this because I want you to understand what goes through my mind anytime I'm changing my policies or decisions on what I'm dealing when I'm dealing with my customers. I have dissatisfied customers. I've been in business for over 15 years at this point. I'm not going to hit everyone out of the park, and sometimes I think even if I've done everything right, there are some people that are just really unreasonable and just want to be mad. And there are some times where situations just suck, where I've done the best I could, and in spite of putting in all the effort that I can, I fail anyway. But that is different from situations where I've engineered something where you're practically begging somebody to hit you in the face with a hammer. The reason this pisses me off, not just as a consumer advocate, but also as a business owner, is because I would not in a million years have the balls to try any of these things because I have that basic self-preservation of I don't want to get hit in the face with a hammer by one of my customers. Maybe it's because I spent too much time in New York City and in Bed-Stuy before it gentrified, but there's certain things that you just don't do to people if you want to have a business. It's insane to me that there are companies out there that think that this is okay. So there's a company that purchased the company that produced this software. I don't want everybody to blame OC3 Entertainment. It does look like OC3 Entertainment was acquired by Speech Graphics, and it was after the acquisition that this happens, about less than a year. So this is a very common thing you'll see happen now, where a company will sell to somebody else, and after they sell, they do something like this. Now, it's funny because you actually have a couple of the responses from the CEO. Hi, I'm the CEO of Speech Graphics. I saw your post about wanting to keep your Face FX Professional going past its end-of-life date on November 30th, 2026. I think we can find a way to make it work, but I want to be straight about why we're retiring it. Face FX Professional was priced for indies, but it costs us more to maintain and keep that license server running than it brings in. On top of that, large studios have been using the indie instead of licensing unlimited, which is what it's built for. Between the two, the product isn't sustainable in its current form. Now, again, I shouldn't be interrupting this. I should finish the whole thing, but I can't. It just makes me angry. When he says licensing server, what he means is the thing that allows you to activate the product. So they don't trust me that I'm not going to pirate the product. So what they do is they punish the legal owner of the product. Never the pirates. The pirates never have to deal with this shit. But the person who bought the product and paid $1,000 for it, every time they install it, they have to activate this. And sometimes the product is going to phone home with different pieces of software to figure out whether or not you're using a legitimate copy. Again, something that never happens with the pirated version, only happens with the paid one. And it's going to figure out whether you're using a real copy of it. And that costs them money. And to me, that's a them problem. If I sell you data recovery and I say, I will recover your data for $600, I can't come back next year, take your data away from you and tell you it's going to cost $15,000 because I actually figured out that all the marketing I'm doing so that I could get customers like you is costing me much more than I thought. I could never say that. That's insane. That's a me problem, not a customer problem. The same way that your licensing server is a you problem. So here's what I would propose. If it's costing you so much money to run that licensing server, turn it off and send everybody a patch for the software so it doesn't require the licensing server anymore. That's a great way to solve the problem, right? You're not going to do that. Of course you're not going to do that. And that, in my opinion, is why piracy is completely fucking justified. I say this as somebody that paid $79.99 for open source software as a 13-year-old teenager. I'm willing to pay for the things that I find valuable, but I will not for one fucking second accept any of these excuses from any of these companies as to why it is you're allowed to take away my shit because you can't afford a licensing server. Okay, distribute an offline patch. We don't want to do that. Well, fuck you. You bought the company, you bought the resources, you bought the debts, you bought the obligations. Fulfill your fucking obligations. They sold a perpetual goddamn license. If you don't want to offer that, then give the company back. Or give people an offline patch so they can continue to use the software without ever having to connect to your licensing server on any computer they want. DRM is not a paying customer's problem. It's a you problem. And if you want to keep doing shit like this, sending out emails telling people that their $900 software is now $35,000, not once, a year. Don't be surprised if we return to a society where nobody has respect for contract law or the law in general. That's not a world that I want to live in because contract law benefits me. Being able to have contracts with my customers where we write down on paper what we're both expecting and we both live up to our obligations has been very beneficial for me as a business owner for damn near 18 years. And I don't want all of that to be destroyed and just return to the rule of the jungle where somebody just knocks me on the head with an SD card reader because they don't want to pay for their data recovery at the end and takes the drive back. But that's the world that people like you are speedrunning us towards, and fuck you for it. And last thing I want to get over here is because somebody suggested that this get put on the Consumer Rights Wiki. A lot of people were suggesting that this get put on the Consumer Rights Wiki, and somebody from the Consumer Rights Wiki said that this would not be fitting because it needs to have a certain number of coverage. It can't be just one person's original research. That is technically true. However, what you can do is you can make a user space article. So this article that I have on consumerrights.wiki right now is not actually a main space article. It's an article on my user space. See how it says user :Lewis? This is kind of like a blog article. I'm going to be instructing the moderators at the wiki to come up with a very short guide on how to make a user space article. A user space article is an article that may not necessarily live up to the standards for a main space wiki article, but allows the entire issue to be cataloged so that once it does get all the information that it needs, once there are more citations, once we are able to independently verify it by a number of other people, we can then easily take that and turn it into a main space article rather than having nothing at all. I don't want that to discourage you from actually making articles on the wiki when these things show up. And if you want to get get my attention on something, I do read my inbox every day, but if you have made a wiki article on an issue, that's much more likely to get me excited to discuss it in a video if you've made a wiki article. And I think that's a good way to go forward if I want to try and utilize and leverage my audience to try and document all these abuses of consumer protection in an organized way, rather than it just be, hey, Louis, here's an issue, and like I have 800 emails a day and people want me to look into, I can't look into 800 issues a day. So I'd like to start leveraging my audience to do that. The reason consumerrights.wiki has the high standards that it does is because I want to be able to show this to legislators. I want to be able to show this to a court someday. I want to be able to show this to judges, to senators, to Congress people. So when a lobbyist says that the legislation that we're suggesting is a solution in search of a problem that doesn't exist, I can show them in the most disciplined way possible that this problem does indeed exist. The user of the software said something that makes a lot of sense. Regarding the business challenges of maintaining it, I understand, but that's the reality of acquiring a company, assuming its existing agreements. From a consumer perspective, Speech Graphics bought a product and is now simply choosing to brick it. If Speech Graphics is unwilling or unable to maintain the software I purchased, the solution is simple: issue a full refund of $988.68. I hope this gentleman goes ahead and takes them to court. And here's the thing, like, it's one of these things where it's not even about whether you win, it's about wasting this company's time. I want to see Speech Graphics get taken to court in small claims court or commercial claims court 15 to 30 times. When you go to normal court, you're expected to have a lawyer, but when you go to small claims court or commercial claims court, you're not expected to have a lawyer. And the great part about going to small claims court and not being expected that you have a lawyer is usually you only have to pay a filing fee of $20 or $30. If one person does this, whatever. But if 20 people, if 80 people, if 500 people do it, their expenses to respond to all these legal battles are going to be more expensive than keeping up that licensing server, or more expensive than coming up with an offline patch for the software. I can't do that. I can't make a suit on behalf of you because I wasn't aggrieved. If you've used FaceFX software, I really hope that every single person who ever has opens up a small claims court or a commercial claims court against Speech Graphics for stealing away what it is you bought and paid for. And even if they win in court because of what it says in the end user license agreement, even if this wins, that's not even the point. The point is they are trying to take away something from you. At the very least, you should take away something from them. And when I look at what it costs to have a lawyer defend you on these types of claims, I think they're going to wind up paying a lot more in legal fees than they would pay in refunds. It is your job to make sure that they pay way more in legal fees than they do in the cost to keep up that licensing server if they decide to go ahead with things in this manner. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. I'll see you in the next video. Bye now.
We also have the duty not to infringe the IP rights in the process. It is in fact the manufacturers who have the relevant rights, not consumers.